Happy midweek, it's December the 14th. You're watching The Big Story with me, Hairianto Diman. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss an episode. Singapore might be looking at a rather sluggish year ahead as private sector economists slash their 2023 growth forecast for the nation by a full percentage point. Based on the quarterly survey of professional forecasters released by the Monetary Authority of Singapore today, economic growth for 2023 is projected at 1.8%, down from the 2.8% growth predicted in the September survey. Meanwhile, the 21 economists and analysts surveyed raised their inflation forecasts, projecting 2023's headline inflation to be at 5.2%, sharply higher than the 3.5% predicted in the previous survey. The 2023's core inflation is forecast to come in at 4%, up from the September survey's 3.1% projection. FTX founder and former CEO Sam Bankman-Fried was denied bail in the Bahamas overnight and remanded in custody. That's despite his lawyer arguing that he was not a flight risk. His next court appearance will be in February next year for an extradition hearing. The 30-year-old has been charged by US prosecutors with defrauding investors following the implosion of his cryptocurrency exchange. Meanwhile, in Washington, the new FTX CEO testified on the company's collapse, telling lawmakers about the lack of oversight and financial controls at FTX, and calling it one of the worst business failures he has ever seen.
The FTX Group's collapse appears to stem from absolute concentration of control in the hands of a small group of grossly inexperienced and unsophisticated individuals who failed to implement virtually any of the systems or controls that are necessary for a company entrusted with other people's money or assets.
After avoiding major outbreaks for the past 2 years, COVID-19 is surging in a few of China's major cities. Now, if you live in Beijing or Wuhan, chances are you will know someone who is currently infected. There have been long queues at fever clinics as infections spiked following the easing of COVID restrictions, as well as changes to testing and quarantine rules. For more on the situation in Beijing, we are joined by China correspondent Elizabeth Law. Liz, we saw long queues at fever clinics and residents are scrambling to get medication. Just how severe is the COVID-19 outbreak in Beijing?
Well, it is actually fairly severe. Of course, official numbers don't reflect it because those only reflect the numbers that are going for PCR testing, for nucleic acid tests at the booths around the city. But basically, everyone in our social circle has separately been down with COVID, including basically the entire Straits Times Bureau, except for myself. So it is very widespread. I would say by an estimate, about 50% of the city is now down. If you were to go onto the streets, you would see that roads are very, very empty. The only vehicles that are running along the streets now are delivery scooters, delivery motorbikes, and most offices are shut. A lot of restaurants and malls have also been shut because they simply don't have enough staff, because many people are just down with COVID. At the same time, we had seen that there were long queues at hospitals and pharmacies over the past few days. But I think since yesterday and today, this has calmed down a lot because the Chinese government has also started pushing more clinics to be open within the community, is like community health facilities in a way. So that is taking a little bit of the pressure off the hospitals.
With the virus sweeping across Beijing, what are people doing? Are you able to get food easily?
I would say fairly much pretty easily. You can still get food. The delivery apps are still online. You are definitely able to order things. Of course, things are taking longer because firstly, there are fewer delivery riders out there. And secondly, more people are using these delivery services. So, instead of taking, say, half an hour or so, things can take up to, an hour, even 2 hours to be delivered. And when you go into a shop, into a supermarket, for instance, like this morning, I went to do my grocery shopping, and the supermarket floors, were just lined with bags that the staff had packed for delivery. But it simply had not been picked up because there just aren't enough riders to come to come and pick them up. But by and large, you still can get things. Medicine is definitely a lot more challenging. A lot of pharmacies have been sold out, so people are depending on their own stash or bartering with friends, borrowing from friends, which has been what is going on. But if I wanted to order food from a restaurant in the city center, if the restaurant has not been shut, I definitely could still order takeout, which will take maybe about 45 minutes instead of the usual 20 minutes to be delivered to my house. So it is definitely, Beijing is not running at the same, hyper fast, hyper efficient speed that it usually is, but it still is trundling along and things are still going on.
It seems China is now getting on with it and learning to live with COVID. What do you think the next steps will be?
I suppose it will take a while for this wave to settle because it is only going through Beijing now. That China is a very large country after all, and this is a city of 21 million. We are seeing a similar sort of outbreak in Wuhan, but I think not at the same rate as it is in Beijing. I think the wave actually needs to go around the country first, and experts have estimated that this will probably affect some 60% of the population within this first wave. And 60% of 1.4 billion is over 700, it's nearly 800 million people, which is, if you think about it, that is a lot. So I think that actually needs to go through the entire country. It's going to be a very, very hard winter, as I have written about last week. But hopefully, this country comes out of it a lot stronger. And, by Chinese New Year next year or next spring, we will see some sort of improvements. Of course, really significant change will come when there is quarantine-free travel in and out of the country. I think that truly, for many of us, is the benchmark to when zero COVID is going to end.
Elizabeth, thank you for the updates and do stay safe. China correspondent Elizabeth Law in Beijing. The last dance continues for Lionel Messi, who put on a majestic performance against Croatia to send Argentina to the World Cup final on Sunday. Argentina never looked back after a well-converted penalty by Messi in the first half set the ball rolling for them. Julian Alvarez then chipped in with 2 goals to seal the victory. Speaking after the match, Messi confirmed that the final will be his last match in a World Cup. With 1 spot in the final secured, all eyes will now turn on to the second semi-final match, which pits defending champions France up against Morocco. Both teams go into the match knowing that they will have an opportunity to rewrite history if they do go on to lift the trophy on Sunday. Those are our top stories today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by clicking the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.